It's our ongoing, I think, 13th or 14th virtual meeting. Hopefully, next few months we'll be able to see each other face to face. So there are some protocols on virtual meetings, which is I'm just going to read. I know all the members know about that. Members to have their videos on at all times, but to put microphone on mute unless speaking. In case of technical problems, meeting will adjourn until resolved. If member loses connection, meeting will adjourn until reconnected. If technical problems persist, the meeting is inaccurate and meeting will be abandoned to a later date. When voting, members to state I have heard discussion and I vote to grant or refuse the application. We will go by the clock on members' personal computers and announce that meeting is being videoed and audio recorded and will be available to watch, listen to on the website. Okay, thank you. And may I ask the members to introduce themselves, please? Yeah.
Chairman, please forgive me for interrupting you, but before we go around and introduce us, I just wanted to say something. As you probably know, this is now the third meeting where we have no chairman appointed to this committee. I didn't say anything, but we didn't raise it in January, and we didn't raise it in February because we were rather hoping that the Labour group would appoint a chairman at the council meeting on the 25th of February. But unfortunately that didn't happen, and I think it's almost certain that we're going to have a few more meetings, and we're really pleased that you've been chairing the meetings. It's nothing against you at all, and so much so that I think it's important that we appoint a chairman, because we can't have a situation, I've never experienced this before, I've been a councillor a long time, whereby this very important committee has no chairman. And it's actually extremely unfortunate. And so I'd like to ask you, and I really say this respectfully to you, I'd like to propose that you become the chairman.
And I would actually want to second that proposal, that you become a chairman.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Councillor. Now, as far as I understood, because it's only a few meetings left since we didn't have any chairman, so I was asked to be the chair of planning committee. But I'm not sure whether I was formally appointed or not. But I'll raise the question with the leader of the council, Councillor Graham Hanson.
Sorry.
But I accept your nomination. And I ask my other colleagues, I mean, are you all right to just have me chair this meeting in the next one?
Councillor Ali, it's Alison from Democratic Services.
Yeah.
As it's been moved and seconded, do members want to vote on that?
Yeah. When I ask for the vote, everybody's happy?
Is every...
Forgive me for interrupting, Chairman. I just think we need a bit of clarity. If you become the chairman, you are the chairman, goes with that the responsibility, and then the vice chairman position becomes vacant. You would be formally the chairman, as long as you realise that. It's not the same as now, because what you've been doing up to now, and you've done it very well, if I may say, is you've actually been filling this gap. This gap will now be filled with you, as long as that's clear. And then we have to select or elect a vice chairman. Okay?
Okay. I mean, you mean to elect a vice chair today?
Well, we need a vice chairman.
Yes.
Alison, what's your point of view on that?
If members are agreeing to make you chair of the committee, there is a vacancy for vice chair, so therefore there would need to be a nomination and a seconder for vice chair, and then the vote.
Okay, thank you. So can we vote on the chair of the meeting?
Those in favour of Councillor Ali?
I raised my hand.
That's unanimous. So can we have
Thank you for your support. I'm only going to be there for next 1 or 2 meetings anyway. And now, can we nominate vice chair?
I don't wish to be rude. Why do you say that? What plans do you know about that we don't know about? Why do you say that?
I'm taking over as a mayor as from 4th of May, so I won't be able to do that. Marilyn, thank you.
Maybe, sorry, Chair, can I just come in at this point? This probably needs for a group discussion rather than just, going through, though legal has obviously said for tonight. Let's have you as the chair for tonight.
No. It's not just for tonight.
Can I just finish what I'm saying? Sorry. So as you've been nominated and seconded for tonight, let's just carry that through and hopefully we will have a discussion at our group in terms of the vice. And if you just leave it vacant, I don't see it having to sort of be an obstacle to move forward.
I don't want to be disrespectful, and I know there are people watching this that want to get on with the meeting.
Exactly.
Said that, it's not up to the Labour group, and frankly, you haven't done a very good job of it, have you? Because we've had a vacancy for chairman now for months. So therefore, we have to have a chairman and vice chairman of this very important committee. You can't, it's not up to the Labour group, it's up to this meeting now. But I think it's Alison that needs to do this, or Vedanta or somebody, because it's not something you can just leave. Supposing you end up with a situation whereby you have a Vedanta can't make it or has an interest, and then what? We have to go through the rigmarole right in the middle of everything. You've got to have a chairman and vice chairman of the planning committee. It's far too important.
Let's listen to our legal colleagues on that. Marinali, your point of view on that?
Yes, Councillor, the Constitution does appear to allow this. It does say where there isn't a chair, the committee can appoint a chair. And if you're happy to accept nominations, you've been nominated. There has been somebody seconding that nomination. I think you should go for a vote and then appoint the vice.
Okay, so
chair.
we can now go for vice chair, appointment of vice chair. So in nominations,
I propose Marilyn Ashton to be vice chair.
I would like to second that nomination, Chair.
Should we go for vote on that?
Yes.
Sorry.
Accept it.
Sorry, Chair. I would like to nominate Simon Brown.
Okay. And second? So you're going to second it, Ajay, okay? So can we have vote on
So I think, Councillor, we would have to now vote on both nominations.
Yeah.
It's which one do you want to deal with first?
Apologies, it's Alison. Can I be clear who's seconding Councillor Simon Brown? Councillor Proctor. Thank you, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. I want to clarify something, Alison. As this is supposed to be decided by this committee and not any groups or anything, and if it was for the groups, it hasn't been decided so far. So this appointment that we make tonight stands, right? Until and forever.
The committee are now going to vote on each nomination for the appointment of vice chair.
No, you didn't hear me. You didn't hear me. I am asking a question. When we appoint whoever, chairman and vice chairman, they will stand forever, not for just this one meeting. Is the clarification I want from you, Alison?
Yes, just to clarify, these appointments will be to the next annual annual council meeting when all the memberships are discussed.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Alison.
So now we need to vote on each nomination in turn, please. If I can hand over to you, Chair.
Yes, can we take a vote on Simon Brown first? In favour, appoint him as vice chair.
So that's 4. And those for Councillor Ashton? 3. So Councillor Simon Brown is elected as Vice Chair of the Planning Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we can proceed with the meeting. Thank you. Now, can I ask the members to introduce themselves? So myself, Councillor Ali, as you know, I'm just appointed as a chair, but I was vice chair before. And Marilyn Ashton.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You're to be congratulated.
Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Ashton, Councillor Marilyn Ashton, and I'm the Conservative spokesman on this committee. I'm very experienced. It's a pity that I didn't get the chairmanship.
Thank you. Simon.
Hello, I'm Simon Brown, Vice Chair of the Planning Committee, also with quite a lot of experience.
Christopher.
Councillor Christopher Baxter, and I'm a full member of the committee.
Ajay.
Sorry, Councillor Ajay Maru, congratulations to Councillor Ali and Brown. I'm reserving for Keith Ferry.
We'll come to that. Natasha.
Councillor Natasha Proctor, congratulations, Councillor Ali and Councillor Brown. I am reserving for Councillor Assad tonight.
All right, thank you. Anjana.
Congratulations, Councillor Ali, to become a chair, and to Simon Brown as well for vice chair. I'm Councillor Anjana Patel, and I'm a full member of this committee. Thank you. And I have got a lot of experience in planning as well.
Thank you. Now, next is we got 5 backbenchers to speak today on 101 Vaughan Road and also Norman Stevenson on Northcote, which is 86 Rickmansworth Road, and Councillor Richmond Almond on 64 Durley Avenue. Now, any declaration of interest? No. Now we go for the minutes of the last meeting held.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I was expecting you to do members and non-members first. I have a pecuniary interest in the Vaughan Road car park application and will be leaving the meeting, albeit virtually, for that item.
Right, thank you, Paul. Thank you. And the minutes of the last meeting, do we agree on those?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Marilyn, I missed you. Did you say anything, Marilyn?
I only said yes.
Good, thank you. Now, I got a public question from Mr. Mike Williams. Is Mr. Mike Williams is there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you read your question, please?
Yes, I can. Would the Planning Committee please urgently consider approving a supplementary planning document to protect West Harrow from high-rise developments, particularly given that it is a low-rise residential community? Further, would the committee define tall buildings in this context relative to the height of the existing properties in the neighbourhood? And additionally, will the Planning Committee acknowledge that the adoption of an SPD to do this offers fast-track additional protection to the suburban character of West Harrow?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. My response is matter is in relation to the Harrow local plan, including the adoption of supplementary planning documents, are not the remit of Planning Committee. They are the remit of Cabinet as they form part of the policy framework of the Council, as defined in the Council's Constitution. The role of the Planning Committee is to assess planning application against the local plan adopted by the Cabinet and full Council, rather than to set a policy. Consequently, the committee is not in a position to respond in the way sought in the question. That is, we are not in a position to approve an SPD. So
Chairman,
this is
You surprised me with that.
Mr. William? Yeah.
So you have surprised me with that. I thought it absolutely was within the powers of the planning committee to adopt a special a supplementary planning document. And I'm sorry to challenge you.
It's a technical question, so what I'll do, we'll discuss it and send you a detailed response in writing.
Yeah, you're reading a prepared answer.
Right, this is a technical issue, so we have to take advice from the professionals, and then we'll have you detailed response on my side from when I've taken the advice, because it's you say that.
Chairman, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you, but actually this is, you're right, a supplementary planning document is something that is a function of what used to be the Local Development Framework Panel, but that was abolished, and now we have a planning policy working group. But it's a good question and something that this committee should have an opinion on, even if we ourselves can't do the technical work. And from the Conservative side, I can honestly say that I think it's a great idea. We should do something particularly to protect Vaughan Road car park, because we already have an established principle of 8 stories high there. And, you know, according to policy D9, 6 stories is the right height, or at least the tallest it can be. So actually the answer, it's a good question. It's not something this committee has remit to do, but it is something that we have to consider, because supplementary planning documents form the basis of a lot of our decisions, and we have to understand these policies. So it's not an unreasonable question to ask this committee. And the answer, as far as we're concerned, is yes.
Mr. Williams, I mean, as far as I know, under the planning law and guidance, a supplementary planning document cannot set a policy. So any SP cannot prescribe definition what is it, a tall building nor maximum building heights in such area. So such policy matters have to be set out in the council's local plan, which is based on evidence and subject to at least 2 rounds of consultation and independence. So I think we as far as I'm concerned, it's not in the remit of planning committee, and we'll take get into the detailed technical answer in due course. Thank you.
Okay, am I allowed a supplementary question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm concerned that the technical detail of the answer you've given is incorrect, but beyond that, I was asking if the planning committee acknowledged that an SPD will provide additional support and protection for the suburban character of West Harrow. And I think it's absolutely right and proper to ask this committee if they're prepared to support that. Whether or not they can execute on it or whether it needs to go to full council is another matter. But can the planning committee agree that they should be restricting tall buildings in suburban areas, and an SPD is an effective fast track way of doing it, and therefore encourage the rest of the council to get on board?
Mr. William, as I've explained to you, because we as a planning committee, as far as I know, we can't do that. It's in the remit of the cabinet and the council. And,
no, you can't do it, but you can express an opinion, and that's what I'm asking. I'm asking for your support.
Yeah, we'll support you, but we'll get in writing back to you on technical points. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. William. We got next, yeah, Anjana, yeah.
Sorry, Chairman, but this is an appropriate question asked to an appropriate committee, regardless of what the technical side of it is concerned. We were asked whether we would.
I think, Anjana, we have already said that as far as I'm concerned, it's not in the remit of planning committee to decide.
I think it's
the remit of the cabinet in the framework to make the the policies on the planning. Okay, so we will look into that.
The second question was what our opinion was, regardless of whether we have the power to.
Yeah.
implement it as this committee, what the opinion of members of the committee was and the influence that might have on the rest of the council. I think that was the gist of his second question.
Exactly, and at least we should have an opinion on that. Whether we want to save our
Let me ask the legal. Can we do that, Marlene?
Sorry. To express an opinion would not be predetermination of any matter. So in my view, it would be acceptable to express an opinion and leave it at that.
Yeah, so we can take the opinion and just, can we minute it?
Well, what is our opinion?
Sorry.
Then? I mean, I've said yes, 100% we should do it all over the borough on sites that, particularly sites like Vaughan Road car park, that have yet to be developed. They're very specific policy documents and they're swift and easy to do. Because by the time we get round to adopting a new local plan, 2 or 3 years would have gone by and we can't take the chance. So the answer from my perspective, if you're asking us to say what each of us think, is 100% yes. We should do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlene. Simon, what's your view?
Well, my view is quite simple. This is the wrong forum to discuss this. We are looking at a new local plan. There are lots of details to be discussed, lots of issues to be raised, lots of information to have background papers on. We have to consider the housing targets that we are being asked to meet. Is a complex issue, and it's not something that we should be doing on the hoof at a meeting that we're having tonight to determine planning applications. There is a due process which we followed before and we should be following again. So I'm not prepared at this meeting to make comments. I want to do it in a proper forum, in a proper way, with lots of thought, lots of contemplation and the information to hand across the whole borough, against all the options and against all the considerations that go against this. Not something just to say, oh, I don't think we should have something that's 7 stories height in a particular area. Maybe that is the right thing, maybe it's not. We need to take it at a proper pace. We need to do it in the proper manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members who wants to have a view? Okay, Anjana?
Yeah, again, we've been asked for our opinion in this planning committee, and I think we should give it. And I 100% believe that we should try and protect our some of our areas which needs to be protected according to the policy. And I agree with Mr. Williams, what he has asked us to do. And I am really surprised that people have not been able to make a decision, but that's my decision, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anjana. So we've taken the views of everybody. Anybody else wants to just put? Christopher?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do think wherever possible, the council as a whole should be trying to protect the character of this borough. This is an outer London borough. It's not central London. A lot of our housing is what you term as metro land. And I think in very close proximity to that, inappropriately tall buildings, the council should have within the remits of the law as much as it can to protect the character of the existing housing stock and not have it be dwarfed by inappropriate development.
Natasha, Ajay, do you want to say anything? But we'll note all these views and we'll take it forward, hopefully, when we just go through this Harrow local plan. And I'm sure these views will be taken into account. Ajay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Mr. Williams' points that have been, addressed tonight and duly noted. But just as Councillor Brown has said, this is something that we need to sort of look back, take it away, and have a sort of thought process in terms of how it matters or how it needs to be done into the rightful ways. So all the views and the points that have been noted tonight, and it's for something which has been said to go back and work on it. So definitely, we're not just going to brush it off, but tonight we're just noting it. So let's go back and then have a think about and see in the best of the rightful ways what needs to be done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to agree with what Councillor Brown and Councillor Marie have said as well. The local plan is already there. It will be being looked at again, and that is the correct forum to look at this based on, as Councillor Brown said, we have the housing targets to reach and things like that, and there's a variety of different things to take into account. So I don't feel comfortable making that decision here from one question that we received, though I do completely sympathise with Mr Williams and understand what he's saying. But I'm in agreement with Councillor Brown and Councillor Marie that this is not the right time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll have taken the views and hopefully will be taken into account in due course. Thank you. We can go to the next one now. We got the petitions from Mr. Mike Williams regarding in stop the 12-story hotel being built in West Harrow. So the petition is this. We're taking the petition, and the second petition we got Councillor Norman Stevenson on Northcote application, which is 286, I think it's 86 Recommended Road. So these are petitions duly noted. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, yeah. It's Councillor Stevenson here. Can I just ask you, in relation to those petitions, I had a message from the petitioner, the resident, just a few moments ago, asking me not to present it.
Yes, Norman, we're going to go because, as I understand, these two applications are being deferred.
Okay, so thank you.
We have to, when we come to that, so I have to take a vote. Okay.
Okay, but we'll
we'll come to you. Come to that.
Yeah, so the petition hasn't been presented, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Deputations non-notified, references from the council non-notified. Addendum, you agree with the addendum? Is it okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm confused. Mike, do you want me to present my petition, or are you just taking that as read?
We're taking it as a read.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this was we know the petition as read. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
We got representation on planning applications, and we got one additional speaker and also additional objectors. So members agree with that if they can speak?
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Now we can start with our application, starting with 101.
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, I'm now leaving the meeting. Can someone please invite me back when this item has been determined? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last one of officers call you back. Thank you. So our first application is 101 Vaughan Road. So Sketty Perkins.
Good evening, members. Just bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen. So the application site is the Vaughan Road car park. An addendum and supplemental addendums were issued. The application site is an Edge Centre site with a PTAR rating of 6. Here's some site photographs. There is an extant planning permission for a 5 to 8 story building, providing commercial and community floor space and 33 flats. This permission will expire in May this year. So the proposal is to redevelop the site to provide a 129 room apart hotel building with an ancillary rooftop restaurant and ground floor commercial spaces. In addition, public realm improvements are proposed. The principle of the loss of the car park was previously considered to be acceptable through the grant of the extant permission. The applicant has submitted a hotel needs and sequential test to demonstrate why there are no suitable alternative sites within the town centre in accordance with policy DM34. The GLA have confirmed in their stage 1 response that the sequential test had passed and planning policy raised no objection to the proposal. Therefore, the principle of a hotel use on this site is considered to comply with policy DM34A part 2, given its edge of centre location and high PTAL rating. So this is the proposed site plan. Access would be via Vaughan Road. These are the floor plans and elevations. So the proposal is for a 5 to 12 storey building outside of the town centre with 2-storey residential properties located immediately to the south and west. It is physically separated from the town centre by the intervening railway, and there is no justification as to why it would need to mediate between the taller buildings to the north and the suburban character to the south. The change in scale from 2-storey buildings to a 5 to 12-storey building is considered to be wholly inappropriate. There is no justification for a building in this location of such height relative to its context. There are concerns in relation to its massing and angular form, which substantially increases the visual presence of the building. It fails to relate to its surroundings, and it is such a departure from its context that it is visually obtrusive and dominant, resulting in a detrimental impact to the townscape. Furthermore, the proposed development would have a significant and unacceptable impact on the setting of the Harrow and the Hill Conservation Area and St Mary's Church, which is Grade 1 listed. Both the Principal Conservation Officer and Principal Urban Design Officer have objected to this proposal. Within the Harrow Recreation Ground corridor, Harrow and the Hill and St Mary's Church are clearly visible. The proposed development would rise above the tree line within this corridor, and due to its height, mass and proposed materials, it would appear visually prominent and would detract from the view of St Mary's, contrary to policy HC4 of the London Plan and policy DM3. The proposed development would be a distinctive addition, and the properties most impacted would be those to the west and to the south of the site. Given its scale, bulk and mass, it would be overbearing, dominating, and would have a detrimental impact to the visual amenities of 24 Salisbury Road and those properties located to the west. The extent of glazing on the western flank would give rise to overlooking to the rear gardens of properties along Vaughan Road to the west of the site. The proposed development is contrary to policy D3 of the London Plan and policy DM1. With regards to trip generation, the GLA advised that during peak hours, the net impact is very similar to the extant permission. There are 2 accessible parking spaces proposed to the rear of the site, and access would be maintained for the owner of 2B Vaughan Road. Policy T6 of the London Plan states that on-site parking should be limited to operational needs, disabled parking, and parking required for taxis, coaches and servicing. Given the nature of the proposed use, the Highways Department was satisfied that this would not be the form of hotel accommodation which would attract coach bookings. The Highways Officer has also confirmed that taxis can stop on Vaughan Road, and furthermore there are existing parking restrictions on Vaughan Road which would limit long-term parking. The Highways Officer and TfL have confirmed that given the site's high PTAL rating of 6, 2 car parking spaces and 16 cycle spaces are acceptable in accordance with policy T6.4 and T5 of the London Plan. Both TfL and the Highways Department have raised no objection to the proposal. So the application is recommended for refusal, and those are the 3 reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Question from the members? Any questions? Simon?
Thank you, Chair. It's just so I'm clear in my mind about the difference between the plans here or the application here before us tonight and the extant permission that has already been given. I think the visualization slide, am I right? Is it the difference in colours that indicate the extra height and bulk of the current application as opposed to the extant permission, so we can see visually what it would mean extra, in a sense, for this application as opposed to the comparing it to the extant one. Is that correct?
That's correct. On this slide here, you can see the extant permission is, you know, kind of like a shaded colour, and then this darker colour, I mean, that is the extent of the proposed building.
Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Can I ask my backbenchers, the councillors, to speak? I've got Councillor Marika to speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations, Councillor Desamparali, for being the chair of today Planning Committee. Congratulations. Thank you.
You've got 5 minutes.
My service to my ward. My service to my ward is 11 years. So I really know what they like and dislike. I'm part of the furniture of the Star Ward. When this planning surveyors and engineers did the Zoom meeting, me, my colleague Adam Swaski and Councillor Christine Robson, I was in Sri Lanka, and I really told the surveyors and the engineers to consider the height. I'm very, very grateful. The planning officers, Beverly Kucha and Ola and her whole team to refuse this application, because the things in Western Ward, the constituents know what they go through. They had enough having hierarchy buildings. I totally asked the surveyors and the engineers to make it eco-friendly, keep the height low, and to make it more friendly atmosphere for the community, because Western people are very passionate about their living area. So for me, I'm very grateful for the planning committee officers, which they have really looked into the issues, what we are going through at the moment in the hierarchy buildings in Harrow. The constituents live in West Harrow. What they face is not me, what I face. They contact me when they have a trouble. So enough is enough for tall buildings in West Harrow Ward. Changing the planning committee rules and regulation to have a lower buildings is another chapter. But it's enough for West Harrow constituents to go through what they go through at the moment. So please consider it. West Harrow constituents are a lovely bunch of people. They will listen to Harrow Council planning the regulation. They'll come up to the meeting. Please listen to them, what they need, and fulfill their needs. I'm very disappointed. Once again, the surveyors and the engineers, we 3 councillors have worked very hard to get the message across to the community. But you engineers and surveyors, in spite of that, produce it. So I once again thank the planning committee planning officers who have done a very good search on this and refused the application. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you ask Councillor Sosky, please? 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and appreciate the planning officers' extraordinary work to review all the hundreds of comments that have come through and the very detailed documentation. So along with my fellow councillors, I don't want to repeat the many very valid reasons for this application to be refused, not least the entirely inappropriate character of the development in the area, the obstruction of the views, the disruption that would cause to local residents as well, and the fact that it doesn't, of course, add any housing to the local area, so it doesn't help us meet any of those goals that we spoke about earlier. The 2 additional points that I wanted to flag, one was I understood from Katie's comments that there weren't objections to the provision of car parking on site, but I think we do need to be realistic with this kind of development as an apart hotel, that there would be nonetheless, huge additional need for car parking in the local area. And then you'd simply be bringing people who are visitors to the area competing with local residents for very scarce car parking spaces. I do think that is important to take into account in this application, but also as a marker for any future variants on this application that might come before the committee. And the second is I wouldn't want to weigh in on the debate about the supplementary planning document in terms of where it sits technically, but I do think it's important to recognise that West Harrow is a low-lying neighbourhood and one that is outside of the intensification zone. So while I fully support our plans to deliver on our housing targets, particularly around the intensification zone and around the other programmes that we have, I think we do need to respect the fact that West Harrow is not in those plans in one way or another to give guidance to developers that they should avoid coming forward with aggressively high or dense plans in the very limited development space that there might be in the ward. So on that basis, I would commend the planning officer's recommendation to refuse the application, but also a really clear statement from the committee about what would be expected on the site. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Adam. And got Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be brief. I'm the third councillor speaking on behalf of West Harrow, but I would also like to express my gratitude for the tremendous amount of work done by the planning officers over this particular planning proposal. And I'm very glad this evening to be able to speak for the residents of West Harrow, who have patiently and steadily stated the case against this proposed development, and I wholeheartedly support them. The proposed development is inappropriate, and the need for it is, I believe, not substantiated sufficiently by any of the arguments that I have heard. We've come such a long way from the original plans for the site, for housing on a proportionate scale, with the planning done by the council in very close consultation with the residents. So for me, it is very sad that this is the situation now. I also am not going to belabor the point. I could quote extensively from the planning team's very thorough commentary in this proposal refusal, but that I think would be repetitious and not necessary. Just finally, I would like to express my gratitude to the West Harrow residents for their patient understanding of the restrictions of my role on me because of my role as a member of the planning committee. I'm very grateful for that understanding and that patience. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Any comments? So I got to hand, Marilyn.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Well, obviously, we're all pretty relieved and pleased to see a recommendation for refusal. I can't imagine that any member of this committee, but who knows, would disagree with that. The only comment I would make, though, is picking up on some of the really well-made points that Councillor Salisbury made. That is that were we to do a supplementary planning document for Vaughan Road car park, we could do it quite quickly, and then it would hang off the already adopted core strategy. And what we could do is we could specify in that document the kind of development that we'd like to see. Because you see, the problem is, although this particular development is way too big, it's 12 stories high, you can see when you look at the photograph, I think Councillor Brown made a good point when he asked a question, you can see the extent permission, which is massive, and it pales into insignificance in comparison to what we've got before us here tonight. So, you know, there's no question that the officers have got it right, and they've got through. And I've checked them thoroughly, believe it or not, very sustainable, well-worded reasons for refusal. But also, as Councillor Salisbury also mentioned, it is quite important that the point is made, even if it's not a reason for refusal, that having 2 parking spaces is ludicrous, actually, from a park hotel. Even with a Peter score of 6A, and in plain English, that means it scores very high for transport connections. But the trouble is that if this does get to an appeal, it could even be a public inquiry. And all of the reasons for refusal would be examined very, very carefully. If we put a reason in that unfortunately doesn't have the policy to back it up, and it doesn't, unfortunately, we could end up having to defend a reason that is not sustainable. So although I think most of us agree that 2 parking spaces for a massive development like this is really ridiculous, unfortunately we can't use that reason. And finally, I will make this observation, and please forgive me, I don't wish to be disrespectful, but it's rather interesting that we do have a full slate of West Harrow councillors backbenching here tonight. And of course, we're always pleased to see them. But it's a pity that they weren't there, actually, when we came up with the permission we gave ourselves, because we've established a principle on this site of 8 stories high, which I consider to be much too big anyway. And I'm very sorry that that happened, because that really sets the bar quite high before you start, which is almost certainly why we've ended up in a mess like this. And secondly, I think it's a great shame that the site was sold, frankly, particularly to a company that has an association with the erstwhile chairman of this committee, and when he was in charge of regeneration. I think it's a pity that that happened, and I think it's a shame that the ward councillors have only just now realised the seriousness of this and have stepped up now, because I think that they maybe should have spoken up a lot earlier. So, Chairman, in short, I'm very happy to support the recommendation for refusal, but I am sorry that we've had to end up like this in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Anjana, you got?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to see all my West Harrow 3 councillors backbenching for this application tonight. But as Marlene said, it's a pity that they did not step up when the council was giving itself a planning permission to build 8-story building. They could have come and done the same at that time, and maybe they would have been able to stop it. And also, when the site was sold, especially by Councillor Ferry's declared association with Dendy Living, they could have said something there as well and saved all this anxiety and problems and stress to the West Harrow residents. So, but I'm so glad to see all 3 of you that you are taken West Harrow residents quite seriously now and know what is happening to them. So there you go. Thank you very much. And I also agree with the refusal, whatever is mentioned on this application by the officers, and agree to refuse this application. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to have a motion to refuse. Simon, are you going to propose motion to refuse so we can take a vote?
Oh, yes, a proposed motion to refuse.
A second?
I'll second that.
Chairman, I'll second it.
Thank you.
Let's do it cross-party.
Let's Christopher?
Thank you. Do you want me to vote now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Simon?
Yes, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to refuse.
Natasha?
I've heard all the discussions and all the reasons, and I also vote to refuse.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to refuse.
Anjana?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you. I've heard all the discussion and vote to refuse the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, all the committee members.
All right, so now we got 201 and 202, which has been being deferred. So can we just ask Beverly, can we take this one first before we go on to 1 or 2 to save the time?
Chair, I would strongly suggest that you did that. There are people attending tonight that are interested in that. So we have set out the reasons why we would like, as officers, this item to be deferred so that we could complete the full reconsultation process.
Okay, can I just suggest take a vote on that to defer that until next meeting?
Yes.
Agreed.
So if somebody
Everybody
could
agree on
second,
that?
Councillor Ali, if somebody could second that, and then if you could move on to the vote,
Yes.
please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So everybody agrees, so we can defer it until. Thank you.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. Beverly is deferred. It's agreed to defer. Okay, can we come back to 1 or 2 now, please? Halford.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members.
Matt, yeah, Matt is here.
Yeah,
It's all yours.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Please let me know when you can see it.
Not yet. Yeah, we can see it.
Brilliant. Okay. So just on the addendum item, there's been an additional 5 letters of support received since the agenda was published. So now there's a total of 34. In terms of the site, it's the Halford site on Sheepcote Road. As you can see here, it's just located here. To the north, you've got Gold's Gym. To the northeast, you have Manor Court. To the southeast, you've got Kensington Heights, and here you've got Manor Parade. Just a few photos to give some site context. I'm sure you all know the site. You can see Halford's here from Station Road here. A view up Sheepcote Road with the Harrow 1 development across the road. Halford's just there. Another view of Halford's, and then a couple of views from inside the site. This one is to the rear showing the court, and this one shows Gold's Gym. In terms of the proposals, I'll just talk you through those. The proposal is for 2 blocks. First one, we'll go back to this. There's 2 blocks. This one is a part 9, part 8, part 7 story building. It tapers down to the rear here towards Manor Court. And this block here, if I show you another slide, actually you can see it better, with slightly different orientation. The block at the rear is part 6, part 5, and also part 2 story at this point here. In terms of the proposal also it retains 8 car parking spaces here for the residents of Manor Parade, and also proposes 5 car parking spaces, disabled car parking spaces for the proposed development, which is in line with the London Plan standards. It also maintains a right of access through the site between the 2 blocks to Manor Parade at the rear. There's currently an access through the site for the residents, and this is being maintained as part of the proposals. Another point I'd like to point out is that at present, the residents of Manor Court have their refuse collected from the Halford site. So obviously the refuse lorry will come in, the refuse operatives will walk in to the back here where the bins are stored currently, trundle them out, empty them and put them back. Now, as part of this proposal, that will no longer occur. The new owners of the site have decided that they don't want that to happen, and they don't want any vehicles entering that site apart from the cars to park here in for Manor Parade. Now, they're completely within their rights to do so, and the residents of Manor Court will need to speak with the refuse department at the council to agree a different refuse collection strategy. In terms of the appearance of the buildings, I've got a couple of slides here to show you. This is showing the development from one angle, and here from the southeast elevation, as you can see, and then the rear elevations here and the side elevation. Oops, sorry, that's the elevation from Sheepcote Road. So that's the 9-story element here that you can see that fronts the main road, and with the second block here towards the rear. And as you can just about maybe make out on your screens, there is actually the access is through here. From 1st to 6th story here, you've got walkways between the two blocks, so people can access the two blocks. In terms of the proposal, in terms of the principle of development, the site is located within the Harrow Town Centre. It is an A1 use, however, it's not in a protected parade. Therefore, there is no policy requirement to retain this use. There's no in principle objection to the loss of this unit. In terms of the impact on the character of the area, as you can see from this particular slide, here you can see in gold what's being proposed. Across the roads, you've got the Harrow 1 development, which is 8 stories fronting Sheepcote Road, and it rises to 11 and 16 stories. In terms of amenity impacts on adjoining occupiers, the development has been designed in such a way as to minimise as much as possible the impact on the neighbouring properties. The separation distances to Manor Court, the rear here, at this edge, it's 15.8 metres. However, what the developer has done is to reduce the height at that closest point to 2 stories to minimise the impact as much as they can. It then tapers away, so at this point here it's 22.5 metres, which obviously is in excess of the minimum separation standards. Similarly, here to Kensington Heights, we've got a separation distance of 19.2 metres, which again is in excess of the minimum separation distances. There's considered to be no detrimental overlooking. Similarly, here to Manor Parade, the distance well in excess of 18 metres. And in terms of amenity, that was amenity and character appearance. Also, the scheme is for the proposal is for 149 one-bed, one-person units. They will all be affordable housing. They're going to be a product that's called discount market sale. What that means essentially is that they will be sold at 80% of the market value, and Harrow residents will get first pick on those flats. So for a period of, I believe, 3 months, after which that will cascade to the rest of London and be more of sort of more on an open market. So I missed one slide, so just to show you what it's going to look like. These are 3 CGIs that are of the proposals. Here you can see from Station Road, you can see the 9-storey element there's tapering down to 8 and then sort of 7 at the back. This is from the opposite side of Sheepcote Road with Kensington Heights here, so you can see the 9-storey block there fronting Sheepcote Road. You can just about here behind the trees make out the 8-storey Harrow 1 development. And here is a face-on view from Sheepcote Road, and it's right down the public access. So not the public, the right of way for the Manor Court residents to walk through, and you can see the interconnecting bridges here for the site. And so the planning committee is asked to grant planning permission subject to the conditions and a section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions? Yes, Christopher.
Thank you. I just wondered if officers could give a bit more detail on how these are resold. So, is it a similar principle to, say, a Warden flat where it has to be sold through the management company? Presumably, we're attracting first-time buyers to these, and then at some point, after a few years, hopefully they'll want to move on to further up the housing ladder. When they come to sell, what are the sort of protections in place?
Thank you. Yes, so first of all, there will be a Section 106 obligation that these units must remain affordable in perpetuity, i.e. forever. Also, Pocket Living, who are the developers and who own the site, have a number of measures in place whereby if anyone or when anyone comes to want to sell their unit, they have to inform Pocket Living, and they have to get their agreement to put it on the market so that it's done at the appropriate price. So there's 2 measures. There's one where we can control as a council, which is the Section 106 obligation, but also the developer has their own measures in place as well, whereby the owners of the flats must get approval from their freeholder then to sell the units on.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I've got Councillor Anjana Patel. You want to ask any question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know Councillor Baxter has asked, but Matt, so this will be monitored by the council as well as the developer, or whoever is in charge of this will be in this building?
That's right, yes. So we will obviously have control in the sense that we will monitor the Section 26 element, and obviously the developer has their own measures in place to make sure that these units are sold at the appropriate price, sold on at the appropriate prices in future. And
the people who will be buying in future will also be able to buy at the discounted price.
That's right, yes. So they will be a discounted market sale unit in perpetuity, so they will always be discounted up to 80% of the market value.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jenna. And we got 2 objectors, and they will have 3 minutes each to speak, and then we have got applicant to respond, 6 minutes to speak. So may I ask first objector, Louisa Key, to speak, please? 3 minutes.
Hello. Hiya. So I'm one of the 3 directors of Manor Parade Residents Association, and I'm here tonight to discuss the refuse concerns and ultimately asking where are all our bins going to go. As has already been discussed, access by refuse lorries to the entire site is being removed. However, all Manor Parade bins are sited in a position which requires access to the site by the refuse lorries. No provision has been made by the developer or anyone else to re-site our bins for Manor Parade residents and businesses. The proposed new bin area that Pocket Living are developing for their properties is planned about 10 metres behind the new refuse collection bay on Sheepcote Road. But that means that there is, for the domestic bins, which are 12 flats, which are currently in the flat gardens, they're up to 60 metres away from the nearest point of that newly planned refuse collection bay. So that's a 120 metre drag for domestic bins. And the worst bin store is about 65 metres away at the very end of where our parking is. So that's 130 metres to drag a commercial bin. Well, they're just not going to do it. The union won't allow it apart from anything else. The nearest refuse area, just behind the Persian restaurant, has got access onto what will be the back of the disabled parking, right onto the disabled parking, which if you've got 149 planned flats and I think 10% are deemed wheelchair homes, that's 14 to 15 flats. It's likely that all those 5 spaces will be in use all the time. So there's no way they're going to get any bins out of there. So until there's a solution to where all these bins are sited, I just can't see how the development can go ahead because no provision has been made. There's fly tipping problems if they're all sited at the front of the building, and Pocket Living have got that issue as well. That's all at the front. We spend thousands on vermin prevention of vermin, and uncollected bins are just going to be even worse. So ideally, I think the whole site needs rethinking. We need a new...
You got your 3 minutes now. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. May I ask...
Councillor, sorry, Councillor Ali, if I may come in.
Yeah.
The Constitution allows usually only one objector. However, the committee have a right in exceptional circumstances to permit 2, but that has to be done by way of a motion. So if you want to propose a motion...
We agreed, I think, and...
Yeah, we haven't done that. I'll second it. That's fine.
Yeah. We agreed, I think. I just when I asked the objectors about applicant, Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, shall I start?
3 minutes.
Yeah, you've just refused a development because it is clearly too tall, massive, unacceptable in bulk and scale, visually prominent, overlooking of rear gardens in particular, and you just thank residents for their patience and their determination to play their part in retaining Harrow's character. I represent the 36 local residents who live in Manor Court. The huge structure now proposed will sit within 2 metres of their rear fence. Yes, portions of it have been reduced, but we were asked to superimpose the images that they'd done from a Manor Court perspective. I've sent those in, but I'll try to hold these up to see. I don't know if you were able to see the Manor Court is in the front, and a building will absolutely dwarf the residents at the back. I've got another image there that helps to show. I don't know if you can see that. We find the assertion that they've made, all these 36 residents who are very, very unhappy about the size, to be entirely well-founded, having superimposed pocket living's design. It's of sufficient magnitude to warrant refusal in our view anyhow, and with the possible exception of the previous application that we've just seen, it is difficult to conceive from Manor Court's perspective of a clearer instance of unacceptable overlooking and loss of privacy and amenity. The two residents, Elaine and Linda, are in their 80s, as are many elderly residents. They've lived there for many, many years. It's going to have a severe and detrimental impact on on all of these 36 residents who are quite up in arms about it. I think that's all my minutes that I need.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Yes.
Now, can I ask the applicant, Nick, please, to come and respond?
Hello, councillors. Can you see me?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Nick Cuff, and happy St Patrick's Day. I'm a director at Pocket Living. I'm pleased to present the proposal for 149 affordable intermediate homes. Pocket is a SME developer working in partnership with the Mayor of London and Homes England. We build homes specifically for first-time buyers, and 40% of our buyers are in fact key workers. Pocket has delivered in over 20 boroughs. We focus on town centre locations. Our approach is where possible to deliver 100% intermediate housing, which is what we're doing on Sheepcote Road tonight in the proposal, which is in the council's opportunity area. Our homes are space standard compliant and are designed carefully for modern living. Unlike shared ownership, buyers own 100% of the home. There is no part rent, part buy. Research from the LSE identifies that over half our buyers come from HMOs, with 37% living and working in their bedroom during lockdown. Pocket homes are designed with generous windows, flexible internal space and low running costs, giving people a route onto the ladder if they so choose. Our homes are sold to those who live or work in the London Borough of Harrow. To pick up Councillor Baxter's point, they're not for investors, and the restrictions remain on the onward sale. Analysis by the economist Quad identified that homes would be affordable to 42,000 potential Harrow renters, where only 8% can afford to buy a currently available medium-priced home on the open market. In the local ward itself, 2,400 residents be able to buy a Pocket home. We took a design-led approach to this application, working in conjunction with your design review panel, and we believe that the number of homes proposed here is the appropriate amount. The proposal steps down from 9 stories to 5 at the back and is within 2 stories at the bounding of Gold's Gym. Now, the distance is not 2 metres from the rear of Manor Court. It's 23 metres at its furthest, and 75% of the building is over 18 metres. A roughly 6 metre high evergreen screen sits between the proposed building and Manor Court, and the roof terrace is also screened with a 1.5 metre balustrade edged with planters. The refuse issues that have been picked up tonight are private matters and not matters associated with the planning application, but I believe Harrow's officers from the refuse team are going to be working closely with local residents to ensure that refuge is sufficiently serviced as part of the future development of this application. This is a highly sustainable development, achieving its 35% carbon reduction. It is both car-free, promoting cycling and public transport. Under difficult circumstances that we've all had to deal with, we've consulted widely with local community, including mailing out to 588 households and residents. We've had 2 meetings with local residents groups and 33 email exchanges and maintained a phone line throughout. Currently, just over 1,600 Harrow residents are registered to buy a pocket home, and a further 18,000 key workers in your borough would be eligible to buy one of these homes if they were consented. We're working closely with Norfolk Park Hospital and who've been made aware of the opportunity. Finally, very pleased to see that 34 local residents have written in support of this application. We're aware that a number would have liked to speak tonight and tell their stories directly to you, and unfortunately they could not. We very much hope that you'll support the officer recommendation. I'm very happy to take any potential questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Members, any comments? Marilyn, you got hand up?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I'm very grateful actually for some of the feedback that we got. We had our briefing separately on Monday, the three Conservative councillors, and we asked a lot of questions and they were answered very well. Actually, I'd like to thank Matt and Pocket Living for coming back to us so quickly with the answers, because we weren't quite sure what to make of it, because this is the first of its kind in Harrow. But actually, it's really quite a brilliant idea. But I do sympathise with the residents living in Manor Court. One has to understand that we really can't get involved in the private matter of how the bins can be emptied, not accessing the site to somebody else who owns the site now. That is something that this committee, and unlike before, this committee can't get involved in, unfortunately. But I'm sure that the refuse department will try and help the residents. I'm convinced they will actually, as best we can, to make alternative arrangements. And I'm also quite pleased that there is, unless I've got it wrong, please correct me, pedestrian access through for the residents of Manor Court. So is that right, Matt? Yes, it is. They can go through, yeah. So they can get into the town centre very quickly. Around the scale of the development, well, I mean, you can't get away from the fact that it's a large building, but it's in a road of large buildings, and it's not out of character. It's in the town centre. It's nicely designed. Would we normally give permission for a building with this number of units, all of one bedroom? No, we wouldn't, because normally you'd have a mix of room sizes and mix of number of bedrooms. But in this case, what this is designed for is what we need. We need to help people to try and get onto the housing ladder. And I think it's very well done, and it has my support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marilyn. So, Christopher, you would like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I really think this, it's good quality one-bedroom properties through this discounted market sales. They're great starter homes. The design looks good, and I think it's important the sort of tapering off that we've got, as well as it being quite well screened at various points. But as Councillor Ashton said, I think there's an innovative way of getting first-time buyers onto the housing ladder, and in particular, I support the ethos of promoting these to the people of Harrow. I think that's very welcome, rather than a transitory sort of population in the centre of Harrow, people that actually, attracting people with an interest in Harrow and a connection to our borough. Because I think as councillors, instinctively, we want to improve the lives and opportunities of the people of Harrow. So if we can get people who if we can widen the group of people for whom first home ownership, first rung on the housing ladder is actually a possibility, then I think that's a very good thing.
Thank you, Christopher. Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. Matt, just a quick sort of confirmation. Is this project one of its first in Harrow? Did I get that right?
That's correct. It's the first one in Harrow, yes.
Yeah. On this note, I think I'm just going to agree with what's just been said by Marilyn and Christopher in terms of, the first-time buyers and somebody who needs to up their to own a household. This would be a good start. So I would certainly support this application based on what our officers have also said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I've got Natasha, then Anjana, and then Simon. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to echo the thoughts of my fellow councillors and colleagues that have already spoken. Speaking as somebody that has grown up in Harrow and gone to school in Harrow, I think the idea of owning your own home in Harrow is a dream to a lot of younger people, and also the fact that we're marketing this towards key workers as well. It's not that far from Norfolk Park Hospital, and I think given the last year that we've just had, to give the opportunity to people that would not normally be able to afford to live in Harrow and stay in Harrow. I know a lot of people don't want to leave Harrow, but they get to a point where they can't see how they can possibly remain. So I think, as Councillor Ashton has said, normally, you know, a whole building of one-bedroom properties wouldn't be something that would always be looked at. I think it's high time that that has become a possibility, and I commend Pocket Living for the way that they've looked at this development to make it look nice as well to the community. And also, as Councillor Baxter said, with the screenings that have been put in, they've done, I think they've worked with everybody to the best of their abilities to make this an application that we can approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Anjana, you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Nick that this is obviously a first project in Harrow, but you have got, I guess, other projects in other boroughs which are working successfully. So that's why I have got much more confidence in this project, even though it is a first project in Harrow. Is that correct? You have got other projects running?
Yes, Councillor, we have at the moment 9 live projects across London, and I would be absolutely delighted to show members at the appropriate moment around one of our schemes, so that you can judge for yourselves the quality and the time and effort we put into designing these homes for first-time buyers, hopefully in your borough in the coming years. But yes, we have many buildings, and I'd be delighted to show you around one day one of our schemes.
I would definitely take that up, because I would like to come and see one of this project, because we've seen it in our presentation, a video of it, but it would be nice to see one already which is up and running. So I will take that opportunity and say yes to that. So thank you very much.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I very much welcome this application and this type of housing. It is innovative, and it does meet the needs of people trying to buy their first property in Harrow. It's so difficult, it is so expensive, and this kind of scheme will help tremendously for people in that position, and there are loads of them, Much of what I was going to say has been said by other members, so I won't take any more time, but I will say that I am sure that our waste management and refuse colleagues will work closely and sympathetically with the residents affected in manner in the flats behind. I've no doubt about that, and we will find a solution for the bin collection on those flats property. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, you would like to come back again? Yeah.
Very quickly, Chairman. I think we all agree. Just to say that on the video, because Councillor Patel mentioned it, it was very clear that actually these are really quite nice sized flats. It was quite interesting. I mean, the actual size of the lounge and the kitchen was very high spec, and the bedroom was a really good size, really nice actually, beautifully done, lovely bathroom. I mean, it's a really pleasant environment for a first-time buyer, definitely. I just thought I'd add that in, not because I'm trying to advertise them, but simply because I was impressed with what we saw. And I think it would be nice for the committee when we are able to have a look at one that's up and running, just to get a feel for it, because I think this is the future of how we can help people up, onto the property ladder, because it's beyond most people really at the moment in this method. Thank you, Chairman.
Just to add to that, Chairman, the excellent sized flat, but as you say, separate, as has been said, separate areas to enable home working, which is going to be crucial even on the other side of this pandemic.
They were very nicely designed. Very nicely designed. The kitchen, particularly, kitchen is quite good, and the bedroom. So now, as I see that everybody agree, to approve. So can I just through the procedures to take the vote to approve the application? Simon?
Yes, I've heard all the discussion and arguments, and I vote to approve.
Marianne, bless you.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. I've heard all this discussion and I vote to grant.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
And Jenna?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant this application. Thank you.
Okay.
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant and hope the officers come up with some sort of a solution for the neighbours for the refuge, which is a different matter. Thank you.
Yeah, Natasha?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve also, and in agreement. I'm sure the refuse team and the officers will find a suitable solution for the residents.
Definitely, yeah. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Well done. 203 is now the next one. We got Councillor Richard Allman to speak as a backbench later on.
In councillors, I will just share my
screen.
You see my screen?
Yeah, Katrina, yeah.
There's an addendum and a supplemental addendum on this following an additional objection letter. 64 Durley Avenue is an end of terrace property. The proposal is for a single-storey rear extension, a hip to gable and a rear dormer, and conversion to flats. The extensions have permission under previous applications. The proposal is for a two-bedroom flat on the first floor and within loft space, and a one-bedroom flat on the ground floor. 2 parking spaces were provided in the forecourt, bins alongside, and the rear garden is converted is divided into 2 with cycle spaces. The application is recommended for approval as the room sizes all comply with under plan standards, and there'll be a separate impact on neighbouring properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Any questions, members? Any questions? No. May I ask Councillor Richard Allman to say his words?
Thank you. I'll invite the committee, Mr. Chairman, to go against the officer's recommendation and to refuse this application, and I'll explain as succinctly as I can why. I'll start at the beginning of the report. The reasons given for the recommendation states creation of flats is appropriate in this location, and it doesn't adversely affect the character of the local development. The Pinner Association's comment on this is opposite, where it says that the proposals that would be out of character for the area and reduce availability of family-sized accommodation. Put this in perspective, when the report says it's appropriate in this location, this road has 95 properties, of which 1 is divided into flats, 2 flats. It's a corner property which had scope for extension at the side and is not comparable at all to this particular property, which is on a far more confined site. The recommendation says that the application wouldn't have an adverse impact on the occupiers of the adjoining properties. Paragraph 6.4.3, in fact, we've got 2 paragraphs, oddly enough, with the same number here, extols the merits of the outlook for the residents of the flats proposed to be created by saying they'd have a good outlook onto the back, and then says in the same sentence that it wouldn't have an adverse effect on the neighbouring properties. Well, you can't have it both ways. If somebody gets a good outlook from a flat that would be created, it also gives them a good outlook onto the neighbours. So it is bound to affect their own enjoyment of privacy. Second, the other 6.4.3 paragraph, I'm not quite sure how that happened, says that there are no policies, it refers to the fact that there are no policies against creation of flats. That's in paragraph 6.2.2, but that conflicts with this paragraph 6.4.3, which says that the development wouldn't significantly vary the intensity of the use of the dwelling. Now, the recommendation in 6.2.2 says that this would comply with housing growth objectives, where you can't be meeting housing growth objectives on the one hand, at the same time not affecting the density of the use of the property. So that to me is a nonsense. 3 specifics we've got: parking, cycling and refuse, and these might appear on their own relatively small matters, but planning to an extent is meant to persuade people to behave in a virtuous fashion, and cycling and not driving cars are taken to be 2 of those virtuous ends. Parking, the report says that there would be 2 spaces for cars, says that will be slightly above the recommendation, but we skate over that one. But it says that the parking wouldn't be any different from what takes place there now, and it is a paved forecourt to the house as it is at the moment. But importantly, the plan is for a 1 metre porch built out at the front, which would come level with the bay window. Now, you can't, and the door of that would of necessity open outwards, because to open inwards would interfere with its being a quickly usable fire escape in the case of emergency. So it has to be an outward opening door from that porch, as the plans show. Well, you can't park a car in front of an outward opening door from that porch any longer with a Golf without the car intruding over the footway, which of course isn't allowable for private parking. So it isn't the same parking as exists now, and it's not possible for anything more than a relatively small hatchback for that to take place with that porch there. Second, cycling. Again, the plan, this conflates to an extent with refuse. There'd be 6 bins down the side of the house. For some reason, paragraph 6.3.6 talks about shared access between 64 and 66, 66 being the next door property, which doesn't join on to this. But there's no shared access. There's a fence down the middle. The path at the side of the house, and as the plans show, is much more than half taken up by the wheelie bins. You would not be able to get bikes down to the cycle storage at the back of the house in any way other than by carrying them over the bins. So that is not accessibility for bike use in the normal sense of the word. So again, that's a nonsense. And say that comes in with the point about refuge storage. The only way you be able to wheel bikes down the side of the house is if you pull the bins out and store them at the front of the house, and that of course is not part of the proposal. So all in all, there are a lot of inconsistencies in the report. It's a poor recommendation to recommend a poor scheme. It is bound to have an effect on a road and start to change its nature. It's to say, if you have 95 semi-detached houses in a road, family-sized accommodation, and start to put in flats, and this would only be the second house, it's bound to start altering the nature of the neighbourhood. And finally, I don't accept the point about it being desirable to create small accommodation in Pinner. Virtually all the new accommodation that's been created in Pinner over a period of at least a decade has been relatively small flats. The only family-sized accommodation being built in Pinner at the moment is being built by the council on Waxhaw Lane car park, and the council, by virtue of undertaking that project, clearly
over.
Yet clearly accepts that there is a need for this size of accommodation, not smaller accommodation in Peterborough. So I would ask you please to refuse.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Members, any comments? Marlene?
Yes, Chairman, as it so happens, I was the nominated member that called this into the committee. Some conversions are acceptable. In this instance, this one is not. I think, with respect, I think it's the recommendation is wrong, and I'm going to propose refusal. The proposal represents an over-intensive use of the site, resulting in a loss of residential amenity to the neighbouring properties by reason of the activity generated by the inappropriate subdivision of this family dwelling house into platted development, contrary to policy CS1, Harrow Core Strategy 2012, D1 London Plan 2021, CM1 Development Management Policy 2013. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, Christopher, you're going to second it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a lot of sympathy with the arguments made by Councillor Almond, and I would like to second the motion from Councillor Ashton to refuse.
Can we take a vote on motion to refuse? Can I start with Christopher?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote for the motion to refuse. Thank you.
Marlene?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote for the motion to refuse.
Ajay?
I've had all the discussions on this. I'm going to abstain on this.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote against the motion to refuse.
Natasha?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote against the motion to refuse.
Anjana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote for the motion to be refused, this application.
Yeah, I've heard all the discussion and I vote against the motion to refuse. So I can take my final vote. So I'll say that I'll vote against the motion to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you anyway.
Can we go on to the next one now, 204? Thank you.
Councillor, you need to vote on the officers.
Don't we have to agree it?
Yes, you have to vote on the officer's recommendation.
Yeah. Can we take vote on to approve the recommendation? So I have heard all the discussion and I vote to grant application. Anjana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse this application.
Natasha?
I vote to grant the application after hearing the discussion.
Mary?
Yes, the Chair, it's a pity, but I have heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse. If it was in a different board, it might have come out differently.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussions and I'll vote to grant on this.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
I've heard all the discussion and vote to grant application. Thank you.
Thank you.
We go on to the next one, 204. Charles Grove, number 30, Peterborough Road, Harrow.
Good evening, members.
It's Shamal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening,
Thank
members. Members see my screen? Can members see my screen?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes, but we can't hear you that well.
Right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Councillor?
Yeah.
That's a bit better.
Right. Okay. So the application site is made up of a detached dwelling located along the junction of Peterborough Road and Tyburn Lane. The dwelling is Grade 2 listed. The site is located within a critical drainage area and is located within the Harrow-on-the-Hill Conservation Area. It should be noted the application follows pre-application advice with the council, which the applicant has followed. These are some photos of the application site and plans and elevations of what is proposed. The scheme proposes, firstly, the erection of an outbuilding within the final third of the rear garden with a maximum height of 2.49 meters. Secondly, the installation of new steps from the existing terrace to the lawn area. These steps will be constructed in material to match the existing. And thirdly, retrospective planning permission for front gate which fronts Peterborough Road. The gate is timber constructed and has a height of 1.6 meters. A number of objections were raised, 6 to be exact, from the neighbouring properties. In regard to character and appearance, the design is considered acceptable from a planning perspective. The conservation officer raised no objections. In regard to residential amenity, the proposal is considered to have an acceptable impact in regard to outlook and the impact to privacy of the neighbours. In regard to development and flood risk, the application site is located within a critical drainage area, but is not located within a flood zone. The drainage department raised no objections to the development. Considering the above, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Shmuel. Any question, members? No? Yes, Marlene, yeah. Can't hear you.
Because I tapped my mute button twice. I've got a comment, and yes, I'm afraid it's me again. I did call this in, and it's only because there've been quite a number of people that have expressed concerns, and I wanted to make sure we got this right because it's in a conservation area, and it's also a Grade 2 listed building, and it's obviously very important. It's quite prominent as well. But having gone over this with a fine-tooth comb, I'm satisfied that it's acceptable, and I hope you don't mind that it had to come to the committee, but I always think it's a good idea to get these things right, and we have, I think. So thank you for your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you, thank you. So we can straight go to the vote on the recommendation to approve. I've heard all that discussion, and I vote to grant the application. Thank you. Marlene?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant. Thank you, Chair.
Anjana?
Thank you, Chair. I heard all the discussion and I vote to grant this application.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant.
So it's approved anonymously. Thank you, Shema. Thank you. Next one is 205. It's the Roger Bannister Sports Centre.
Good evening,
councillors. Nabil, yeah.
Good evening, councillors. I'm here. So just by way of addendum, members will note that there have been some further comments that have been received on this from one of the neighbouring occupiers, and council officers have provided responses to that, which is also detailed in the addendum. So the application site is here, which consists of the former civil defence building, which has been redundant for a number of years. Planning permission was granted in February last year to convert this to a cafe, and that was approved subject to conditions. To the south of the application site is permission for an adventure golf course. We've got the Roger Bannister Stadium and Athletics Club to the east of the site, and adjoining the site to the north and to the west is playing fields that have permission and are currently undergoing re-engineering works for new football pitches. So the application itself is for the discharge of one of the pre-commencement conditions which was attached to the permission, which is for surface water disposal. We can see here on the picture that the applicant is proposing a soakaway method for drainage with an attenuation tank, which would appropriately address the surface water disposal requirements of the condition. So the application was referred to the council's drainage officers, who have advised that the proposal would be acceptable and have therefore concluded that the condition can be discharged. The officers therefore recommend that members approve the details that are set out in accordance with the recommendation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nabil. So any questions? Marlene?
Afraid it's me being a thorough nuisance again. I do apologise, but I actually have quite a bit of respect for Mr. Stoker, who is an absolute expert on this subject, and I'm not. Really not. Okay, I've tried to understand what's on the addendum and our responses, and I have to say, other than being able to understand the words, I can't really work out who's right and who's wrong. And on that basis, I know this is something that doesn't sound very important in the general scheme of things, given what we've been looking at tonight. But actually, this site floods really badly. It is absolutely terrible. And if we get this wrong, we're going to make it worse. We really are. And I'd like to propose that we defer this and actually just get somebody else to get a second opinion as to whether or not Mr. Stoker is actually correct. Because I have a suspicion he may well be, because this is actually his area of expertise. And because we do own the site, we are applying to ourselves. And I think we have to set very high standards when we're doing that. Otherwise, somehow, it rather undermines what we might ask of private developers. So, in my view, I'd like to just take another month just to get another opinion on this to make sure that we are right, that what is being proposed will actually solve this terrible problem that we've got on this site. And, you know, it's only a few weeks. It wouldn't be the end of the world. It can wait a few weeks, but I'd like to get a second opinion, Chairman. And I hope that because we are applying to ourselves and because of how this would look if we didn't give it a few more weeks, I'm hoping that other members will give way and agree just to defer, but to have a further look at it and examine it properly. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Anjana, you got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. As we said, this is an application to ourselves. We have actually produced the report on this, and there is another view on this report. We have a major problem of flooding in Harrow, and if we get this wrong, I don't know how we're going to put this right, and then how we can go and ask other developers to do their job properly. So it's just asking to defer it and have another opinion, and then we can look at this application. So I would second Councillor Marilyn Ashton to defer this application, please. Chair, thank you.
Ajay.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question to Nabil. Nabil, just hearing these discussions, and I did also ask at the briefing, just to reaffirm that we have a specialized team that deals with such kind of projects in terms of flooding, because we all know that Harrow has a problem, a massive problem all round, but I just wanted that sort of assurance where the professionals have gone in and done the due diligence, please.
Of course, Councillor. So we've got the local lead flood authority, which is basically the council's drainage department, and they've got statutory obligations in relation to drainage matters, which also informs wider flood risk assessments, and they review all drainage matters when it comes to planning applications dealing with flood risk assessments and sites which are in critical drainage areas. I would add that effectively what the proposal is doing is improving the surface water disposal, because the building is already in existence and the surface water situation already occurs, albeit not done in a sort of sustainable and more appropriate way. So what this proposal is doing, in line with policy DM10 of our development management policies, is actually trying to improve surface water disposal. And so there's actually a strategy that the applicants are putting forward to effectively improve the situation that's already there compared to what's there now if this intervention wasn't being put in place. So I just thought it'd be useful to mention that again to councillors.
Thank you. Thank you. Marlene, yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, Chairman. I know it's been a long evening, and I think after this, if I may ask for a comfort break, I'll be ever so grateful. But out of interest, it's just that we sometimes do get things wrong. And you know, and what I'm asking for is it's not rocket science. It's not difficult. It's just for somebody to have another look at this, because I know the building's there. I know what it is. I know exactly what's going on the site. But we've done a lot to this site, and we've been making a hell of a mess of it. Actually, there's been a most inappropriate dinosaur scaffolding, mini golf. What's it? In the middle of the green belt. We couldn't make it up really. We put a lot more hard surfacing on this site. You know, there is a real problem, and all I'm asking for, I can't imagine why anyone would disagree with this. It's not so terrible. It's just to have another look at it. I'm not saying we should refuse it. I just think that maybe this particular resident, and he's really an expert, might be onto something. And you know, we're talking about a few weeks. It's nothing in the general scheme of things. Can't we just have another look at it? But I think we might have got it wrong, and if we have, we're going to make this worse, not better. That's the point. We want to do something that we're going to pay good money for, that will work.
Marlene, thank you. My comments are, because our professional council officers, drainage experts have looked into that. They are quite satisfied with that, and to defer it, I think these other people are going to look into it again, and we're not going to ask some independent outsider to look into that. So I'm quite satisfied with our officer's recommendation.
Why is it that we just can't just ask somebody? It's not the end of the world. Look, in the end,
if our officers, council officers, we should have full confidence in them. Their recommendation, they've looked into that. They are satisfied. I think we should really just have good confidence in our officers.
The appeal was dismissed. You voted against it. It was recommended for grant. It went to the inspectorate and it was dismissed. We were right. The officers were wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay, Eileen, taking your points. Anjana?
Yes, Chair. I mean, it's not saying that officers are not capable or not doing their job or anything like that, but it is not a gospel. Once it's been said, that doesn't mean it's always 100% correct. If that is true, then I have a problem. I'm sure you have a problem. North Harrow Station all the time get flooded, and under that Crown Court, that place gets flooded all the time. So what are the technical team or whatever the team is doing about all this flooding? Sorry, Councillor, sorry, Chair, but the problem is there in Harrow, and if we have an opportunity to look at it again, we should, because we are only creating problem for ourselves and for our residents who we are supposed to be looking after. That's all I have to say. I rest my case.
Thank you. Thank you. Natasha, you would like to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to I would like to agree with what Councillor Maru said as well. I think we've got an entire team of people that have looked at this, and as Nabil said, they've come to conclusions and they've included them in the report to say that they're going to look to improve the drainage, let alone look at what it is already. I think comparing it to other parts of Harrow isn't really appropriate because this is a completely separate development, and so with everything that's been written in, I think that we've got our experts that have looked at it and they've been able to compare it to other situations and they've come to this conclusion. So I don't see why we shouldn't agree with them. Thank you.
Yeah, Marilyn, yeah.
Yes, Chair, I'm going to be very brief because this is enough already on this, but out of interest, I know this area probably better with respect than some of the other members. And Natasha, it's nice to see you on the committee, by the way, welcome. But out of interest, I think in this case, there really is a terrible problem on this site. And if we're going to spend our good money as a local authority, putting in something that a really knowledgeable expert, an expert person, a local resident has been kind enough to tip us off, it's not going to work. All I'm saying is, can't we just have another look at it? I really can't understand why that's such a terrible problem for members. I really can't. In the end, we'll put it to the vote and what will be. But I find it really hard to understand the mentality of members of the committee.
Just thank you, Marilyn. Can just go back to Natasha now?
Well, no, Chairman, I'm sorry. No disrespect, but I really cannot understand why we can't do this. I just don't get it. I'm not saying we should refuse it. I just want to try and get it right. I don't get it. I really don't.
Can I take comments from the officers, Nabil or Beverly? Are you there?
Yes, Chair, I am there. Clearly, it will be for members to determine. I can only reiterate what has been presented. We have a team of drainage engineers who, from my experience, are well, apart from being qualified, apart from being the lead local flood authority, they push applicants to the limit. And one of the biggest sticking points we have in negotiating on any applications is to get drainage to agree. The fact that they have reviewed this not once, but twice and 3 times even to make sure it's right. And they are advising us that they are happy with those conclusions. As officers, I have to, representing the officers, I have to say I would take their advice. It will be for members to consider that as they consider the deferral, but I can only reiterate that.
Councillor, if I could also add, I mean, members will note from the planning history subsection that there was a previous approval of details that was refused. So where details have not been sufficient, the council's drainage officers have taken the right step to suggest refusal, which was done previously. And in this instance, they've obviously advised that the details are satisfactory and have given their approval for it, which is why the recommendation has been put forward as such.
Thank you, Nabil. Natasha, you would like to come back?
Yes, thank you. Just in response to Councillor Ashton, thank you for welcoming me to the committee to start with. And I would also say I know the area very well as well. I went to Hatchend High School and I spent more time than I care to remember doing cross country around Roger Bannister Sports Centre, and I understand it very well around there. I walked my granddad's dog through those fields nearby, and so I do understand the drainage problems over the years. I've run through those muddy fields many a time, unfortunately. But I think listening to what Beverly said and what Nabil has said, I think the team have gone back and forth, and I don't see why there would be a different conclusion to come to from what they've put in place. Again, I think deferring it, I don't really see the point of it when we've got many experts that will probably have come to the same conclusion. Seeing as it's been refused in the past because it hasn't been good enough, I think the back and forth that's happened this time, from what I've read, I think is grantable. That's not a word, but yeah.
Can we take a vote to defer the application?
It wasn't that it wasn't good enough, it was that it was non-existent, actually. There was no information, but that's fine. This is the first go at getting it done. Thank you.
Marilyn, are you going to have a motion to defer?
Yes, I proposed deferral, and I think Councillor...
Second, so can we just take a vote on that?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to defer.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote against deferral.
And Jenna?
Have heard all the discussion and I vote for the deferring
Natasha.
the application.
Was that me, Chair? Thank you. I've heard all the discussion. I vote against the deferral. Thank you.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chairman. I've heard all the discussion and I vote in favour of the motion to defer.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to not to defer the application.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote not to defer the application. Thank you. Can we just vote to recommend the application? I've heard all the discussion and I vote to recommend the application. Natasha?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote to recommend as well. Thank you. Approve.
Christopher?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote for the application.
And Jenna?
I've heard all the discussion and I abstain for this application. Thank you, Chair.
Simon?
Thank you. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Marilyn?
Heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain on the basis that we wanted it deferred. Thank you.
Thank you. The application is approved. Thank you. I'll go on to 206, which is Station House, 1113 Crescent Avenue. Nabil, you're again on this one?
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
Did a member request a 5-minute break?
Well, it was me, I'm afraid. I hate to go into too much detail, but can we?
No, that's fine.
I wouldn't mind.
I'll second that.
I wouldn't mind one.
Left, I think you can finish it in the next 15-20 minutes, hopefully. Okay, Nabil.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Nabil, it's all yours.
Just not sure from whether we're taking the break or not, because I think there was
I would like to take a break. It's not unreasonable. Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right.
In
Okay,
5 minutes.
Go quickly.
Nabil, now we all in attendance. Can you please go ahead?
Thank you, Councillor. This is application 206 on the agenda, is Station House, which is a mid-terraced mixed-use building located in the Woolston District Centre. The ground floor consists of a religious church use, and on the first, second and third floors, it was formerly used as offices. The application is to convert the first, second and third floors into 9 residential units. Because of the location of the development with the PTAL 6A, there's no parking proposed on site. So in terms of the application itself, the council's policy officers have advised that they're satisfied with the loss of the office use based on the supporting information that was provided with the application. The proposal would include some external works to the facade and also to the fenestration and windows of the building, which would improve and enhance the character and appearance of the building and its relationship with the street scene. In terms of residential amenity, the windows are located in a sympathetic and appropriate distance to any adjoining buildings and forthcoming developments that are being constructed. And also the proposal in terms of the quality of the residential units themselves would meet the relevant requirements of the London plan. The highways have raised no objections to the proposal, subject to a parking permit section 106 restriction. Therefore, the planning committee is requested to agree the reasons for approval as set out in the report and to grant planning permission subject to the completion of the section 106 and conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil. Any question, members? No? Can we just go ahead to vote on to grant application? I've heard all the discussion and vote to grant the application. Thank you. Marlene?
Yes, Chair. I heard all the discussion. I vote to grant.
Anjana?
Thank you, Chair. I heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant.
Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant.
Thank you. The application is granted. Thank you. Next one is 207 Salisbury Road, and this officers will. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, members. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yes, Phil.
Great. So this application is agenda item 207, number 77 Salisbury Road. The application is for the conversion of the single family dwelling house into a flat on the ground floor and into a 4-person HMO on the first floor and into the roof space. The current application site is a detached dwelling house sited along the western side of Salisbury Road. To the north of the site, you have number 75 Salisbury Road, which is a single family dwelling house. And to the south of the site, you have numbers 81, 81A, which are flats. So in principle, there's no objection to the conversion, a policy objection to the conversion of the site to a flat or a HMO unit. The character, there would not be impacted as there's no external enlargements to the existing property. The proposal does coincide with the removal of an unauthorised wooden canopy to the side in order to provide access for the HMO users to get to the rear garden. In terms of amenity considerations, it's considered that the ground floor flat provides enough floor space, complying with all the technical housing standards. And whilst the HMO provides communal living areas and kitchen areas, HMO licensing has been consulted and they have no objection to the proposed arrangement. And as you can see from the sections, all the floors benefit from the relevant floor to ceiling heights required. In terms of impact to the highway, it's considered that there's no change in the existing parking spaces for the site, and then the Highways Authority have raised no objection. It's considered to be in a sustainable location, being a 10-minute walk from the town centre, providing adequate amenities for the occupiers of the HMO and the flats. as such, recommend the proposal for grant subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Any questions from the members? I got Marilyn. Marilyn?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, it won't surprise you to know.
Can we just see everybody? I think you got the screen still on. Thank you.
Hello. Right. It won't surprise everyone to know that I'm afraid that it was me that got this to the committee, and it's because I am actually quite concerned about some of the room sizes. And I read through the report, and it actually said that this proposal was worthy of support. I disagree. It's not because all of these sort of proposals are inappropriate. As I said before, it's this one that is. And I think we have to be careful. We have to give not only the future occupiers enough space and do things that are going to end up as a satisfactory arrangement for the sake of the people that will be living there, but we also have to take into account the other residents in the locality. And so to get to the point, I'd like to propose refusal. The development by reason of the proposed number of occupiers in current surroundings would be detrimental to the future occupiers and residential amenity within the locality, contrary to CS1 of the Harrow Core Strategy 2012, DM1 Development Management Policy D1, and the London Plan D1 policy, DM1 policy of the Development Management Policy, I'm sorry, Chair, and D1 of the London Plan 2010. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you got Anjana?
Thank you, Chair. I second the refusal for this application.
Okay, so can we take vote on motion to refuse? I've heard all the discussion and I vote against the motion to refuse. Marilyn?
It's a shame we haven't had any debate about this. You can look to people as if people have made up their minds. I vote in favour of refusal.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote against the proposal to refuse.
And Jenna?
I've heard what Councillor Ashton has said, and I vote to refuse this application.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard the officer's presentation, and as Councillor Ashton said, there's been sort of minimal discussion, but I vote for the motion for refusal. Thank you.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussion, as Councillor Brown said, and I vote for granting the application.
No, Ajay, we are on motion to refuse.
I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
So you vote against the motion to refuse. Sorry to help you out, but that's what you want to say, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we were a bit tired. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I vote against the motion to refuse after hearing the discussion.
Thank you. So the motion is refused. We on recommendation to grant. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant the application. Thank you. Marlene?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote to refuse.
Simon?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant the application.
Simon? Sorry, Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant.
Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and vote to grant.
And Jenna?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The application is granted. Thank you. Next one is 2887 Burnt Oak Broadway.
Yeah, that's me again. So the application for 87 Burnt Oak Broadway is It's a proposed change of use from an A1, well now Class E retail unit, to an adult gaming centre sui generis use class. There's been 2 addendums to the application. So the first addendum was just to pick up extra objections that came in after the initial committee report. The second addendum sought to change condition number 5 to change the details to condition the implementation of the recommendations of the noise report. And a supplemental addendum was detailing a letter of support from the applicant. So the application site is a retail unit, now considered to be Class E under the current use class order along Burnt Oak Broadway. The proposal for an adult gaming centre is a sui generis use class. It is a primary shopping frontage, so the council's planning policy team were consulted during the application. They've acknowledged that the sui generis use falls outside of the established DM policies for the proposal. However, owing to the changes in the use class order, it is considered that the wide range of uses that can now be implemented under Class E, the policy would not give the same protection for the kind of uses that could formally be resisted by the policy. The proposal would serve to attract footfall within the district centre and would as such be an appropriate use within the district centre frontage. In terms of character, because it's just for a change of use, there's no changes proposed to the storefront. If there were to be any changes, a separate planning application would be required. In terms of amenity, the application did propose a 24-hour use. However, subject to consultation with Secure by Design team and the potential noise implications it could have in the early hours of the morning, we see it fit to condition the site to be operating from 9 AM to midnight, 7 days a week. They have provided a noise report showing that they are able to mitigate the noise generated from the use itself. And that's what that addendum was seeking to condition. And furthermore, a management plan is to be submitted to the LPA to allow the council to assess the management style of the unit in terms of the patrons. The Secured by Design team have been consulted, and they are happy that subject to all of these conditions that the proposal can be supported. And as such, the proposal has been recommended to grant subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Members, questions? I've got Marilyn and then Christopher.
Well, it's not really a question, but I may as well just get on with this. I mean, yes, it's welcome that we've at least restricted the hours of use from 9 AM to midnight. But if you're living in that vicinity, and there are lots of people live above these parades, it's not going to be much fun, is it? And I can see why. So many people have objected to this. And it's wrong to suggest that just because the use class has been changed, I think last September it was changed, and we don't have the ability per se to say we don't want to lose an A1 use, doesn't make it right to have this specific use. And no sui generis is whatever it might turn out to be, but nonetheless, we know for a fact what this is going to be. And we can therefore come to the conclusion in terms of planning and planning policy that we not in terms of moral views on gambling. I think we've all got our own opinion, and I think they're irrelevant, frankly, to this. This is a science, and we have to look at it very objectively. But in terms of how this would affect residential amenity in the locality, and the idea that it will contribute to the longevity of this particular district centre, frankly, and no disrespect meant, beggars belief, I don't see how it can add to the longevity. And therefore, Chairman, I'm going to propose refusal. The proposed use of the premises would not provide a balanced and positive contribution towards the vitality of the district centre, and would be detrimental to the residential amenity of occupiers within the vicinity, owing to the proposed hours of use resulting in noise and disturbance and potentially antisocial behaviour that would be generated from such an outlet. Constantly, policy DM1 and DM36 of the development plan, DS1 of Harrow strategy, and SD7 and D11 of the London Plan 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the motion for refusal from Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Well, I got a question. Antisocial behavior. I think there was some condition on there. So could you just elaborate on that?
Yes. So the secured by design team, Metropolitan Police secured by design team were consulted, and basically some of the concerns they raised were to do with the hours of operation from the nature of the use. So it's considered that restricting the hours serves to that they're happy in terms of the potential impacts that they've identified, but also the management plan we're requiring them to submit kind of demonstrates the measures that the owners of the unit will put in place to manage the patrons themselves. So it's kind of like you've got those two kind of factors. You've got the restriction on the hours, and then you've got the measures that the owners will put in place themselves to manage it.
Okay, thank you, Will. Any other questions? No. Yeah, Anjana, yep.
Yeah, just a quick question. Will somebody, I mean, there will be people living on top of this gaming outlet, right, Will?
Yes, the top floor has residential use.
Right, so obviously this is going to make so much noise. We're talking about in your noise report, you know, people using all those machines and whatnot. So, and that goes on until 12 at night. Obviously that is antisocial behavior, and we don't know what else will go on in that area after having this opening until 12 o'clock at night. I think this is not appropriate in this particular area. Thank you.
If Marilyn, you would like to come back? Yes. Sorry, yes. Will, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so I'd just like to point out as well that there are other 24-hour uses for other in the area. So you've got the Tigress supermarket, I believe, and there's also another adult gaming centre, which it was in Barnet across the road. Yeah. But the noise report they provided has basically accounted for the noise transference to the upper floor units. And that's why that condition we decided to put in so that they could, once they implement the recommendations of that report, to try and mitigate those impacts.
Thank you, Will, for the clarification, but you cannot compare a gaming place with a supermarket because people don't go and drink and enjoy themselves there. They're just going to do shopping. So there's no comparison. And the other one that you mentioned is in Barnet, not in Harrow. So thank you very much for that clarification.
Marilyn?
Chairman, you know, I mean, is what will be, but I would very much appreciate it if members this time would listen to some of the people that have desperately objected to this and give it a go and see if we can do well at it here. It would be interesting because in a sense, I think it might be useful to test this because we don't have so much experience of trying to do this without the policy that we used to have, which meant that we could actually protect an A1 use class because the Class E is coming. And I would like to see if members would just give this a go, because so many people are desperately unhappy about this. And you can understand why. I mean, we've got to start to at least care about people a bit on this committee. And the reason for refusal that I've proposed is it's not nonsense. It's a solid reason. I'd like to give it a go and see if we can at least establish some kind of guideline from a higher authority to whether or not we can resist these wretched things. Because, you know, from 9 in the morning to 12 at night, 7 days a week, doesn't give people much respite. And I don't want to stray into other areas, but trust me, if I mean, as you well know, I don't normally mention this because it's just a personal thing, but as you know, I happen to be a justice of the peace. And these do cause problems, these outlets. They do.
Thank you.
It's a fact.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Like, perhaps, for the committee to just listen to some of these poor people that have taken the trouble to object. I think it would be very wrong for us to just ignore all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick couple of points to Will. In terms of clarification, do we have any other outlets like these in Harrow, or is this the first of its kind?
So there are adult gaming centres throughout the borough in Harrow. I believe one was granted earlier this year. I'd have to check the case history and search where it was exactly. But yeah, they have been granted throughout the borough.
And secondly, if it is, do we know what their trading hours are?
Again, I'd have to check on the individual specifics for that. But in this case, we're looking to just restrict the hours till 9 till midnight.
It's a slightly tricky one because obviously just trying to understand where you have flats above and then you have something from 9 till 12. Are we in a position to restrict the hours? Is it something in planning that obviously you're able to do so under the policies?
Yes, we're able to impose conditions to restrict hours of operation. And it's also as well shown that the applicant has also agreed to themselves, but it can be done without their agreement.
You mean, sorry, is right now in front of us we have 9 till 12. So are we able to reduce those hours?
Oh, you mean right now in the committee? I don't believe we would.
I think if I might jump in at this point, the applicant has agreed to those hours. This is a high street location. It is not uncommon for uses to be operating within those times, and subject to the noise report that has been submitted, they are our hours that have been agreed with the police. And this is, in officers' view, this is I understand concerns being raised, but these are appropriate hours for this location, for this type of use, with the management operations and the noise report in place. Clearly, it would be for members to determine otherwise, but it would be unreasonable for us now to change those hours again without the agreement of the applicant.
Thank you very much. Natasha, you would like to say something?
Yes, just one more question for Will. First of all, commend the work that's been done with the applicant already on the management of the hours. That's quite clear that where we've got to on that. Do we have any further detail on the management plan that they've agreed to, or is that a case of they've said they're going to put one in place at the moment and we're not sure? Do we know what the management plans are for the other adult gaming centres in the borough, just to give some context?
No, so the condition has just been applied to this site for the management plan, and that's conditions that prior to them being open to the public, they have to submit those details, and then obviously we then approve the details.
Okay, so the management plan is something that will be looked at in future, and we can go back and forth on them with that. Okay, thank you.
Marilyn?
Well, obviously, I propose a refusal. I'm not happy with this. In the event that it's granted, I want to give notice that the management plan, the discharge of that condition, must come back to this committee then, because it's a bit of a leap of faith actually, and this can so easily go wrong. It really can, and I'm so sorry for these poor people that have objected. I really do hope that they don't come to really hate us if this goes through, because I think it's going to disturb them.
Ajay? You're mute, Ajay.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Just trying to get some more clarity on this as such. Are we able to, and this is subject to getting some legal advice and through our offices, are we able to kind of put this away and then come back and do a bit more sort of study or sort of more research on this and come back? Are we able to do that? That's a question for legal and planning seniors. Thank you.
So sorry, but this is the, I mean, Beverly, do you want to go first?
I think officers have done quite a bit of work on this. I don't have experience of these uses within this borough. I have considerable experience in other boroughs and in high streets, including appeal experience on these subjects. The management arrangements, the advice we're getting from the police is consistent. I know Strictly shouldn't talk about success at appeal. I have never won an appeal on this type of use. I've not seen these uses won on appeal. It is a difficult one. The best as officers we can do is put a framework in place in terms of the management and in terms of the noise and the hours of use, to put a framework in place to manage that use and its impacts. I'm not sure. I mean, the question is asked, can we defer? Yes, we can, but I'm not sure that would achieve anything, because I think the research and the work has already taken place.
Thank you, Beverly. Yes,
sorry, yes, I just want to confirm what Beverly has just said. Yes, you can defer if you think you need more information or need time to consider it. But the question is, it's a balancing exercise whether it would be reasonable to defer this.
Thank you. Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to the point about management and sort of deferment. Okay, he's on the other side of it. But Beverly, just coming back to you again in terms of, that would have been my next question, that in terms of, say, it was refused or deferred, the chances of appeal, where do we stand?
I think it would be very challenging. I think Councillor Ashton has made it a really good proposal in terms of bringing the management arrangements back to committee as a detail of that condition, and that way members can see what's been put in place. We can also work with applicants and have the expectation and really push them on that. And I think that's possibly the best way forward to manage this. At the end of the day, it will be for members to determine whether or not they wish to support that this application. I can only advise as an officer, but clearly members can assess the information and reach their own conclusions.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, can I just come back again? Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, my initial questions to Will were around, a few. I mean, I know it may not be, sort of helpful to try and get other places that we have in Harrow and their timings and so on, and whether they have residential above, and if you're able to do so. I don't know whether I'm in my sort of guide in the framework of what we should be assessing here by what we have tonight. Are we able to sort of get this at a later stage? Will?
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to look into that, more than happy to look into that and send that across after. But I think again, it's just kind of reiterating what Beverly said about it being a balancing act, and if it would uncover any new information that would change the assessment based on the information we have.
If I can come in again on that, I think that information would be very useful in framing what that management plan looks like, so that we are being consistent across the borough, whether or not it means the scheme's acceptable or not, again, for members to determine. But in terms of what has gone on and the evidence that we have from other authorities, I am not aware of any complaints that we've received from those operating within the borough at the moment. Certainly we're not subject to anything with it in terms of planning enforcement, but I think it would be a very useful exercise in what is in place elsewhere, because then that will set the tone for what we expect in the management plan to come forward.
Thank you, Beverly. Natasha? You're on mute.
I was doing so well, but it's late now and I'm losing my touch with my mute button. I was just saying thank you to Beverly and also to Marilyn for her suggestion about the management plan. Is that something that we can, before we vote on this, work into what we're voting for, in the sense that we, depending what people vote for, I don't know, that we are voting, if we vote to approve under the premise that the management plan will come back to committee along with extra information on other venues so that we can work that into the discussions about the management plan. I think everybody's nodding,
so you will effectively grant planning permission subject to that plan. So if the plan's not acceptable, you can refuse it. They would just then have to come back with a revised management plan, but the principle of the use would have been accepted by the committee if it was minded to grant it tonight. But the detail of that management plan would still be within the gift of the committee to review at a subsequent meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Beverly.
Marlene, do you agree on that or your comments?
Look, I don't agree that it should be granted. Let's be clear. I only suggested, because I think I kind of understand where this is going a little, that in the event that the committee, and I won't certainly want to let down all these people that have objected in this area, and rightly so in my view, because they know what will happen. And I can tell you it does. I've had quite a bit of experience, unfortunately, with this sort of problem. And then, you know, then so be it. But that's not what I want. I propose refusal. I think that the reason for refusal is reasonable. I think it is sustainable, and you know, I think we should try it. I don't think that this will improve the longevity, as it says in the report, or as I have said in the reason for refusal, the vitality of this district centre. I don't think it will, and you know, the hours of use are lengthy, and I feel already very sorry for some of these poor people, and all I'm asking the committee to do is support them. Let's try it and see.
Thank you, Mary. And you know, you seconded it.
Really disappointing that members, for some reason, come into these meetings sometimes with an idea about something that they've decided then, you know, they can't support. You know, especially this wasn't called in by me. This was called in by the officers. But you know, I find it very disappointing that we can't support people. We are elected, as long as it's a sustainable argument, we are elected to listen and support people. And I find it deeply, deeply disturbing that we don't sometimes.
Just to reiterate, Chair, I seconded the motion.
Thank you. Can you just take a vote on a motion to refuse? I'll start with Simon.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I've listened to all the discussions and I vote against the proposal to refuse.
Ajay?
I have heard all the discussions and I vote to refuse the application.
Refuse the application. No,
no. What?
Are you in favor of a motion to refuse?
Motion to refuse.
You are in favor of motion to refuse. Ajay, you are not clear.
No.
You're mute now. We are voting on motion to refuse. Ajay?
Chair, he agreed. He wants to refuse. He wants
Ajay, you're on mute. I think we lost him. Ajay, are you there?
He's gone.
He's gone.
He's gone. From what I heard is that he wants to support the refusal of the motion.
Well, I think we'll have to wait because he seems to.
We have to wait. I think let's just.
He's dropped off.
He's dropped off because
it sounded like he wanted to refuse, but he was using the wording you'd use for the next vote, not for this vote. But he.
Yeah, it was not clear wording, so I just want to make sure.
He'll turn up in a minute and pull us all out of our misery.
We'll give it 5 minutes. Okay, so can officers get hold of him, please? Hi Ajay, are you there?
This happened before, Chairman. We lost him. I think he's got a little bit of a dodgy internet connection.
Chair, the joy of having
No,
virtual.
he's I've just contacted him. He said give him if he's got network issues, and a couple of minutes he's trying to sort it out, please.
Yeah,
So we'll wait for a few minutes.
Thank you,
Please.
Chair. This is the joy of virtual meeting. I preferred us in the civic center in the chamber to have our planning meetings.
Yeah, that was good. Hopefully we'll come back soon.
I know. Let's hope, because this is the joy. You know, anything can happen. If somebody don't have internet connection, then what happens? You know, because that happens quite often.
Yeah, I got two internets at my home. One is BT and one is Virgin.
I see.
Because my both son and daughter, they work from home, so they are paying for one and I'm paying for one.
To be fair, I can't complain. I've got Sky Internet at home, and at the
luckily-
beginning of lockdown, it wasn't great. But I called them and said what we were on, and I said how long we've been having Sky for, and they just upgraded it for us. And it's been, I've just jinxed myself, haven't I? But touch wood, it's been okay so far for my working from home and my meetings.
With who your provider is, it's got a lot to do with whether or not you're fibre optic. Where you are to that source.
Jay, are you there?
No, they are not there. We can see he's not there.
Yeah.
There you are.
Hey, he is.
Hey, here's a replay.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
Let me explain to you. Marilyn said it's motion to refuse the application. So we need your vote. So.
Yeah, no, my apologies. Something I don't know went wrong, and you know. Anyway, I'm back again. So I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, so I've heard all the discussions, and I vote against the motion to refuse. Sorry.
All right, so Natasha.
I think it's just me left. I vote against the motion to refuse after the discussion. Thank you.
Simon, yeah.
Oh, can I vote twice?
No, sorry, I lost my count.
That's all right.
Christopher, you voted.
I have voted. I voted against the motion to refuse.
I vote to refuse the application and vote for the motion to be refused. Thank you.
Marilyn.
I vote for the motion to refuse the application.
Yes, I heard all the discussion, and I vote against the motion to refuse, and we'll go for recommendation, right, to grant the application. So can we take a vote? I'll suggest that we should add that subject to management plan is brought back to the committee. Subject to that, we will grant the application. So can I take a vote on that? I have heard all the discussion, and I vote to grant the application subject to management plan brought back to the committee as Beverly suggested. Thank you. Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussion and my vote to refuse, and I feel very sorry for these people that have been let down.
And Jenna?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse the application. For the reasons I gave, people upstairs would be, it would be very annoying if you have.
Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions, and I vote to grant based on the management brought back to us for more further clarifications and give, as you've just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to all the discussion, and based on the proviso that the management plan will be put back to committee, I grant to approve the application.
Simon?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I've heard all the discussion. I vote to grant with the proviso that management plan comes back for approval to this committee.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Thank you. Application is granted subject to the management plan brought back to the committee to look into that. Thank you. The next one is the last, and the next one is 209. I think it's Josephine who's going to look into the advise us as 69 Marlborough Hill.
Yep.
Hi, Josephine.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
Okay. I'll just share my screen.
Josephine, yeah, we can see it.
Just give me one moment, please. Okay. Okay, so there's one addendum item. The occupancy level of 4 bedrooms has been corrected as it was incorrectly stated on the report. The maximum occupancy level remains at 9 persons. Okay, so the application site relates to a 2-storey semi-detached dwelling facing south onto Marlborough Hill. The site is located within close proximity to Harrow and Wealdstone Town Centre and has a PTAL rating of 4. The property currently has a 2-storey side extension and a single-storey rear extension. The rear extension forms part of the proposal. At 6 metres deep, the extension was achieved under prior approval. However, it wasn't built in accordance with the approved plans due to spanning the full width of the extended dwelling house. Part of the extension has now been demolished in order to minimise the impact on the west adjoining neighbour. The existing floor plans shows that the property has recently been converted into 2 self-contained flats. This was done without prior planning permission, and there is an open enforcement case on the site. So the application proposes to convert the house into a house of multiple occupants for up to 9 persons. It would have a total of 7 bedrooms, 2 double rooms, 5 single rooms, all en suite, and would have 2 large kitchen/living areas on both the ground and first floor. The cycle storage would be provided internally within a specific room on the ground floor, and refuge storage would be kept in the forecourt, which is the existing location. The application also proposes soft landscaping in the forecourt and also at the rear of the property, and the development would be car-free. It should also be noted that the applicant has followed the advice given at the pre-application stage. So the application is recommended for approval as it would comply with policy and provide a good standard of living accommodation. It would have an acceptable impact on the character and neighbouring amenity, and the proposal would be in a sustainable location. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Josephine. Members, any questions? Marilyn?
Sorry, Chair, it's me again. I called this in. Not acceptable, and it won't provide a good standard of accommodation at all. Perhaps we could take the screen off. It's a bit distracting. Very disappointed. There'll be a lot of people on this in this dwelling. There's not built for this purpose, and again, I just hope that we just for once tonight try and do something useful. So I'm going to propose refusal. The development by reason of the excessive number of occupiers represents an overly intensive use of the site to the detriment of the future occupiers and residential amenity within the locality. Contrary to CS1 Heritage Strategy 2012, CM1 D30 Development Management Plan Policy and D1 of the London Plan 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the motion for refusal. I think it's a great shame that what was once have been a nice family home in a traditional semi-detached property is going to be turned into something with very cramped substandard accommodation, really, with people crammed into these rooms. I'm really not very satisfied by it, but as I say, I second the motion for refusal from Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. And Jenna?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask the officer, when the traffic officers have responded that the proposed development is car-free, and so what did they say when it was 6 people, but 6 to 9 people, 3 more people? And what is the parking like in that area? Is it restricted parking? I mean, we can all go and say restricted, car-free development, but who is going to police that it is a car-free development? People who are going to be living there are not going to own the car. Who's going to make sure all of that? Because this is going to put a pressure on people, because it's supposed to be a nice family house. And then going to 9 adults, obviously is going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of things.
Okay, yeah, so first of all, I did speak to the highways officer and she provided data. So the area is a controlled parking zone, and she advised me that there are 218 permits issued versus a total of 268 parking bays. So even in the unlikely event that all 9 occupants were to apply for a permit, there would be capacity to support the additional parking in the area.
Thank you, Josephine.
I wish that you would have put that down on the report in writing, so we could have been able to see that.
Yeah, that would have been better. But yeah, it was sent to me today by the highways officer.
Thank you,
Josephine. Can we just any more questions or comments? No. Okay, so can we take a vote on motion to refuse the application? Let's start with Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote in favour of the motion to refuse.
Ajay?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and vote against the motion to refuse.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I vote against the motion to refuse.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote in favour of the motion to refuse.
And Jenna?
I vote for in favour of the motion to be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Simon?
Thank you. I've heard all the discussion. I vote against the motion to refuse.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote against the motion to refuse. Thank you. So can we just take a vote on to grant the application? I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant the application. Thank you. Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussion. I vote to refuse.
And Jenna?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote against the granting application. Thank you.
Natasha?
I've heard all the discussion and I just want to say particularly thanks to Josephine for having looked up those figures about the parking permits in advance. I vote to approve.
You vote to?
Approve the application.
Thank you. Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse the application.
Ajay?
I've heard all the discussions and vote to grant. Thank you.
Simon?
Also, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Thank you. The application is granted. Thank you very much, everybody. It's almost 9:30. It's a long evening, so have a good evening, and hopefully if you haven't eaten, have a good dinner. Thank you, officers. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.